Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen, and today we're going to discuss what some might consider to be an unusual topic given the general subject of this channel. And this is the subject of what is great about America. Now, for some quick context, this I think is maybe especially useful given the fact that there are many people on this channel who are from the US who may want to renounce US citizenship. And in fact, the inspiration for this video comes from a conversation I was having with a client recently where they were considering renouncing and may renounce, but one of the questions before renouncing was, well, hang on, what are the great things about America? And the truth is, if you can't find something good about any place, you're probably biased, right? In fact, about anything in general, I think it's a useful mental model to make sure you're not falling into kind of black or white fallacy, is to be able to name 5 good things and 5 bad things about somewhere. But today I'm going to talk about a few things, 3 or 4 in particular, that I think stand out as being some of the best in the US as compared to rival nations. And some people may want to move there for these reasons, some people may want to avoid leaving, and some people may just decide to leave anyway, or stay away. We're going to dive in and talk about it right now. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. I appreciate your subscription. It's very helpful for us. Thank you very much. And if you would like help with relocating abroad, with renouncing, with getting a second citizenship, with getting a residency, etc., please reach out to us. You can book a call with me at calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below. You don't have to remember the link, just click it. Or visit our websites, offshorecitizen.net and offshorecapitalist.com, where you can send us a message. Okay, so again, the context here is really, if you were saying, what are things that the US happens to have that are better for people than other parts in the world, what would these be? And I'm specifically not saying what is the US best at. For example, the US clearly has the most powerful military. But that's not really kind of a net benefit. I'm thinking more like, what are the reasons that somebody would go there or live there, et cetera? What are the things you get that are better than other places? So there's lots of things that you can get that are great in any variety of countries, including the US, right? But these are ones that stand out. So the number one place that starts, I think, is the US at this point in time still has, for the most part, in a lot of fields, the preeminent universities. And so somebody might say, well, hang on a minute, I could just go to university there. Yeah, you can, but it's not just about the university. It's about the ecosystem that develops around that. So for example, the fact that Silicon Valley developed where it did is not purely coincidental. It, in large part, developed in the halo of Stanford. And you get a lot of these types of things. So in many, many different fields, for example, if you're talking about physics, right, the top physicists or the top physics universities are often going to be in the US, and then you're often going to have some of the top researchers who are based there, and so this brings various graduate talent, etc. And so that ecosystem, that expertise, the ability to go and see those people is simply still superior in the US than it is in arguably any other nation, although it is, of course, domain specific, right? So that's number one. The second thing that is really significant is the US access to capital. I've talked about this one before. The capital markets in the US are unrivaled. They are the best in the world, and this has a lot of payoffs. I'll give you 2 quick examples. A number of years back, I had a client from Southeast Asia who was going to be raising money for their business, and if they did so in Southeast Asia, say through the Singapore markets, they could raise at a $75 million valuation. In Silicon Valley at the time, it was a $125 million valuation. Well, this is almost double the valuation, which either means that their net worth is going to be twice as high, or that they can take on twice as much capital without, or for the same amount of dilution, or they can be in a situation where they don't have to give up as much of the company in order to take on the same amount of capital. So that has big benefits. One of the things that I've noticed is that as I talk to people from all over the world, I mean, it's very frequent that the people who I'm talking to are, millionaires, multimillionaires, etc. That's pretty normal for this type of industry. But I would say as a percentage, the percentage of people from the US, and in particular California, who are decamillionaires, is quite a bit higher than if I'm talking to people, say, from UK or from Australia or from New Zealand or from, other part, Germany or Netherlands, etc. And I don't think this is entirely coincidental, right? It comes from, in part, the fact that you have access to these capital markets. And this goes in real estate, you've got really good access to capital. In venture capital, you've got good access to capital. You have public markets where I remember talking to a close friend, and he was mentioning that he was moving to New York, and a mutual friend of ours lived there. And one of the things he was saying was, listen, that guy was out at dinner the other day and he met somebody who could take his company public. You just do not get this in certain environments, okay? So that's a major advantage if you're kind of on a business wealth building journey. Obviously there's certain industries this factors into as well. If you're in film, you want to be in Hollywood. If you're in fashion, there's a limited number of places you could be, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that's something worth considering. Along with that subject is, of course, careers. I've talked about this before. You can, if you're in a specialized field, the top end is generally higher paying in the US, in particular in certain tech areas, than in most anywhere else in the world. So that's something to be considering. And the third thing that I think really stands out is healthcare, okay? Obviously not healthcare itself, but I'm talking about very narrow specialists, okay? So the truth is, there's great healthcare that's much, much cheaper, like an order of magnitude cheaper in some cases than in places like Turkey or Kuala Lumpur or various different other, Mexico, et cetera, various places around the world. You can get often very good quality care for a fraction of the price that you can pay in the US. But if you have, say, some rare small-celled cancer, then chances are the top experts in the field are in the US. And so having access to that medical ecosystem is important. Now, the counter-argument to this, of course, is you can always travel to these places, or at least in most cases you can. Obviously, if we're talking about like emergency care or something, you get into an accident, well, then you're going to get taken care of wherever you are. But if you have some sort of long-term treatment, et cetera, even if you honestly are in a country that doesn't have visa-free access, there's special medical visas you can get to travel, provided that you have the money. So this is available for people. I mean, people travel from Serbia, et cetera, but having that access immediately is helpful. And honestly, this extends beyond just some of the things you might normally think of. And I'll give you an example. A good friend of mine has been having some health problems over the last little while. And, so wants to figure out what's wrong with him. And he's gone to see, he's not in the US, and he's gone to see a bunch of different people, and they don't know what is wrong, right? They do some tests, nothing comes up, they're not sure, it seems really bizarre. And I told him, I was like, look, I'm a part of various different biohacking groups and connected with people, et cetera. But the thing is, in order to get this type of treatment, to see these experts, typically they're in the US. So if you're willing to travel to the US, you can maybe go and see some of these people. And this is just the way that it goes. I'm here in Dubai at the moment as I'm making this video. The reality is that the accessibility of a broad range of, say, naturopaths is not as strong here as it is in some areas. Now, true, if you're in, I don't know, rural Montana, you probably don't have access to that either, right? So, it's not necessarily ubiquitous, but there simply is more of a lot of these kind of like top tier medical things in the US than there are in most other countries. There's some other exceptions that do a really good job as well, but mostly the top tier for many, many specialties is there. And the last thing that I would say is if you're in an industry that requires certain specific skill sets, okay? And what do I mean by this? Well, I remember being told a story by an angel investor who commented on, this was in Silicon Valley, the importance of the middle management talent that had been groomed through growing large, fast-moving companies. And so he was commenting, listen, if your company is doubling every 90 days, this is an incredibly challenging thing to manage. Just the hiring process alone is a difficult thing to manage. And people in most parts of the world have no idea how to handle these challenges. if you're there, you walk across the street to Facebook and you hire the person who went through it with them to come and do it in your company. And so that's sort of a unique advantage that you have that you won't get in a bunch of other parts of the world. As I said, there's counterexamples to this, and you can kind of get into the details of whether they're worth the trade-offs. But I do think it's worth, anytime we're thinking about going somewhere, to recognize what is good about a place and be honest about that. Obviously, there's very personal things like family, etc., and personal taste in culture and conveniences and all that. But these are things that really are top tier in the US, and those might be attractive to the right person. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'm going to look forward to seeing you on the next video.